How can Worcester right the wrongs of systemic racism in its police department? After an equity audit revealed wide racial disparities in arrests and hiring, Interim Chief Paul Saucier is acknowledging the harm Worcester police have done.
Historically, there have been police practices that have been negative to communities of color. We recognize that.
The audit, commissioned by the city, also laid out a series of recommendations for the WPD, which is also currently under investigation by the Department of Justice. To discuss, I'm joined by GBH News Worcester Bureau reporter Sam Turken and Worcester City Council Khrystian King. Sam, Khrystian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for having me.
Sam, let's start off by giving us the headlines on what this report is telling us about how bad the situation is.
Yeah, so this audit report, this equity audit report, was a long time in the making, about 3 years now, and it recommended everything from the establishment of a citizen oversight board to better officer training to more accountability. And some of the main findings included the fact that people of color, people who are Latino, people who are black, are arrested at disproportionate rates compared to white residents.
So to put some numbers on that, the white population of the city is 52%, but the arrest rate is 41%, whereas the black population of the city is 12%, but the arrest rate is 21%.
Right, and another main finding was the fact that although arrests in general have gone down, youth, children, kids under age 18 are arrested at high rates. So that was a surprising takeaway. And then there was some issues with data regarding how police force, and whether they're recording that data. The report found, the auditors found that the police department is not publicly or not recording that data in a way that is easily accessible.
Khrystian, when you saw those numbers, what was your response?
We know that policing can be advanced and enhanced here in the city of Worcester. I was part of a coalition that met with the mayor and the past city manager in establishing this equity audit. We really wanted to delve into policy, procedure, and what the impact that has on community. And, that's exactly what we have here. We have a number of actionable items that we can put in place to improve oversight, and also to take a real hard look at how we're collecting data. One of the things that were revealed is that we're not collecting data on race and age and things of that nature to the degree to which we should. And as we have discussed in the past, there is a bit of a gap, a trust gap between the community and law enforcement in some instances. And the better we can do providing data and being transparent, the more able we are to close that gap.
So, Khrystian, how has the police force responded to your initiatives on this?
I'm sorry?
How has the police force responded to this initiative?
We have a new chief of police in place, acting chief, Paul Saucier, and acting chief Saucier has been engaging. The past chief was not willing to acknowledge any systemic racism. And I think, what we're going to see is some policy changes, some practice changes internally, because in order to do better as a city and as our law enforcement division, we have to start from the outside in. The audit additionally, revealed that police officers themselves have questions about equitable opportunities for advancement. They have questions themselves about unfair discipline that's influenced by who you know and politics. And if you don't have a level of trust inside of the department to the degree that we should, then that also can trickle out into the community. And I'm really looking forward to rolling up our sleeves. We have a municipal operations committee that should be providing oversight for this. And we're currently in the process of attempting to onboard a diversity officer and staff to have proper oversight over this.
Sam?
And regarding the acknowledgement, you played that clip earlier on where the interim chief, the acting chief, acknowledges past wrongdoing in communities of color. The reason why that was so big is, as the counselor said, the previous chief wasn't willing to do that. And that was despite, in 2022, the U.S. Department of Justice launching an investigation into the Worcester Police Department for excessive use of force and discriminatory policing based on race and sex. And through my sources, a lot of people just felt that despite that investigation, despite news reports of more lawsuits being filed against the police department and more settlements for falsifying police arrests and excessive use of force, they felt like there was no change. And there was nothing new coming out of the police department that signaled that these concerns were being taken seriously. Now the interim chief finally makes this statement. And I've already spoken to a couple of people who were like, wow, this is a difference. This is huge. Now, obviously, it's just words. Let's see how, things actually turn out. But just that statement in and of itself, as the counselor said during that meeting in response, like that was big for the city of Worcester.
So what are the key recommendations for the changes that the police force should implement?
Well, as the audit report mentioned, it was everything from diversifying the police department. There have been efforts to diversify. They haven't been as successful as the auditors clearly would have liked.
So as we can see from the Worcester Police Department employees by race from 2017 to 2021, although it's not a homogenous force, it's substantially overrepresented among whites and underrepresented for African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians.
Mm-hmm. Right, and that was right. That's what the report pointed out. And then one thing that the city already has moved on, and the counselor was involved in this vote, was getting rid of the civil service requirement for police chief and deputy chief. Now, that's a move that a lot of other departments around Massachusetts have made because they felt like it wasn't allowing them to hire the officers that they want, because as part of the requirement, your officers need to take this exam and score high enough for them to be considered. It prevents officers, for example, from out of state, chiefs from out of state from applying for positions like this. So the report recommended getting rid of this requirement to actually open up the procedure a little bit, open up the process. And that was a vote that, as I said, the counselor was involved in. And so that was the one initial step they've already taken. And now the report is going back to the city manager for some further community engagement and community meetings about how the public feels about this process. It'll come back to the city manager where he and the city councilor will meet and discuss this issue further and provide more recommendations to the police department for how they all can move forward.
Councilor, what is the first few changes that you'd like to see implemented?
No, we really need a culture shift internally. When you look at, when Acting Chief Saucier made the statement about the impact on communities of color of some of the policing in the past, it was in response to my question that I was asking about the fact that in this report, you have the community stating they had real concerns about policing in many aspects. On the other hand, you had the majority of the respondents saying that there is no issue between law enforcement in terms of trust or patterns of practice in the community. And I asked him, how does he reconcile that? And that's the first challenge. And it starts from the top, it starts from leadership. It starts from really taking a look at data. We need to integrate a system that's easily navigable and also a system that's transparent and available online for folks to take a look at. Those are some of the initial things. And in terms of low-hanging fruit, one of the things recommended was very simply with respect to their internal trainings and in respect to their diversity, equity, inclusion planning, that it must be stated along in their recruitment strategies as well, their commitment to diversifying the workforce, their commitment to equity and inclusion, and that it must be stated in policy for everyone to see, so that we're setting a standard in that department that, yes, this is important. These are issues that must be challenged, and it will make for a better police department.
And Interim Chief Sauce here, at the end of his comments in response to this difference between how the officers feel and how the community feels, he said, look, we're willing to do whatever it takes to address these issues.
Well, Sam, Turken, Khrystian King, this is obviously an issue that we're going to be facing and hearing a lot more about, and we are hoping that the community really can repair the trust that you're talking about, Khrystian. Sam, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.